The flyer curled at the edges, rain wrinkled and stubborn on the refrigerator door. OAKWOD Elementary Family Night, Friday, 6 p.m. Someone had added stars with a silver marker, a cheerful touch that made Ethan Miller's chest feel hollow. He pinched the magnet with his thumb, then let go before the paper could slip. In the quiet kitchen, the hum of the old fridge sounded like a held breath. "Dad," Lily's voice came from behind him, small and careful. 8 years old and already fluent in caution. He turned with the best smile he could find. "Yeah, Peanut," her eyes flicked to the flyer and away. "Can we skip this one?" It would have been easy to say yes, pretend he'd misplaced the memo. Claim a work emergency, blame a stomach bug. But Lily's world had already narrowed too much, and one day she'd be old enough to know when he'd chosen ease over courage. "You deserve to go," he said, voice thin as paper. "We'll make a plan." Lily nodded like someone accepting weather. She padded to the table and sat at the spot where the chair across from her stayed empty. There was a hairline scratch across the tabletop there, a mark from the day Anna had assembled it by herself and refused the manual. Anna had called it character. After the accident, everything had character, even the silence. Ethan packed a lunch Lily would eat, PB&J cut into stars, carrot sticks, a note, "You're brave in ways I'm still learning." He folded the bag and pressed a kiss to her hair. She smelled like blueberry shampoo and washable markers. On the drive to school, Lily watched the world pass with a sketchbook open on her knees. Stars, always stars. She drew them in clusters and secret corners, tiny bright bodies with 5 careful points. Once, a therapist told Ethan that children who'd lost a parent often found shapes they could control. He'd nodded and taken the handout home, then sat on the porch steps that night and stared up, trying to control the ache in his chest by naming constellations. At the drop-off lane, Lily squeezed his hand twice, their code for "I'm okay." He squeezed back 3 times, "I love you," and watched her go. The backpack looked too big between her slight shoulders. He watched until the blue door swung shut and the fog swallowed the last of the line of yellow slickers. The day ran in loops, job site emails, a supplier who promised tomorrow what had been due last week. Miller & Sons Construction had survived the last 4 years through stubborn honesty and small wins. The Sons had been a legacy from his father. Ethan had no sons. He had 1 daughter and an old sign he couldn't bring himself to change. At the site, a city ramp poured into being under temporary lights, rebar ribcage showing through. Men in hard hats moved like a practiced sentence. Subject, verb, object, no wasted words. Ethan checked measurements twice, signed off a delivery, reminded a young guy to tie off before he climbed. He could do this in his sleep and sometimes did. Tom Ray's name floated through conversations like a song from another room. Former partner, sometimes bitter against, always presence. Tom liked volume, big gestures, big promises, big risk. He'd started with Ethan and walked away after Anna died, blaming, stalling, and mourning like they were business errors. "Boss," Lewis called from the far end of the site. "Concrete's short by a yard." "Always is," Ethan said and made a note. Short by a yard didn't mean short by a foot in a year. He had learned to measure more than concrete. By late afternoon, he was back at the house, standing in the kitchen where the flyer watched him like a witness. Family night. It meant photos of smiling parents and cupcakes dewy under plastic domes. It meant Lily winding through a crowd of mother-daughter pairs while he clapped too loudly and smiled too bright like brightness could be armor. He rubbed his jaw until the bristle burned. There was a diner on Pine and Maple where coffee tasted like courage on good days and mud on bad ones. Ethan ended up there in the way a man ends up at the ocean, pulled by tides he can't see. He took the corner booth because Anna had liked it and because habit wore grooves in a person deeper than they noticed. "Top you off," the waitress lifted the pot. Her name tag read Bev and her smile lines said she'd seen every kind of morning. "Please," Ethan said. He wrapped his hands around the cup like it could warm more than his fingers. He liked the diner's soundtrack of forks and conversation, the way the bell over the door announced new people without judgment. A table over, a woman apologized so earnestly for spilling coffee you'd have thought she'd knocked over a cathedral. She grabbed napkins and chased the tide in circles. She had a locket at her throat, silver, tiny, the kind you bought as a promise when you couldn't afford a ring. The waitress waved her off. "Honey, it's a diner. If the coffee's not on the floor by noon, I think we've failed." The woman laughed, shoulders loosening. She had that look some people carried, like she'd learned to fold herself smaller so others could fit in. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a kind of practiced gentleness, as if her own presence might be too much for the room. They caught each other's glance once, an apologetic smile from her, a nod from him. And because life is sometimes kinder than it needs to be, their second meeting came the same day, after the sky turned the color of bruise and neon. Ethan was halfway to the truck when he pivoted and walked back in, heart loud enough to count as percussion. Hi, he said at her table, hating how loud the word landed. She looked up. Up close, her eyes were the brown of good soil, the kind that grew things. Hi, we met earlier. I mean, we didn't meet. I watched you assault a coffee cup. He winced. I'm bad at openings. She set down her pen. A notebook lay open in front of her, lines crowded with neat handwriting. It's okay, the cup had it coming. He took a breath like a dare. I need a favor. Her eyebrows lifted. That's a big first sentence. It's for my daughter. There's a school event, family night. She's shy. She asked to skip it. I can't. He stopped before the word bear turned into something wet. Would you come, as my wife, just for the night? Silence is a kind of weather. This one felt like the moment before a storm decides. The woman's gaze flicked to the locket, then back to him. I don't even know your name. Ethan, he swallowed. Miller, she nodded once, like cataloging him under probably not dangerous, just sad. Claire, she said. Summers. Claire Summers, he repeated, like a phrase that might be useful later. I'll pay you for your time, he added, then immediately wished he hadn't. Not like that, her mouth tilted. Breathe, Ethan, he breathed. Okay, Claire said, surprising them both. One night. No lies beyond the gym doors, and if she asks me anything I can't answer, we don't answer together. He nodded too fast. Yes, deal, thank you. She lifted her mug in a small toast. Tomorrow then, on the walk to his truck, Ethan realized he'd forgotten to ask why the locket felt like a lighthouse in a fog. He would learn, not all at once. Friday arrived steam-pressed and jittery. Claire found a navy dress at a thrift store that made her feel like a schoolteacher in an old movie. She curled her hair at a bathroom mirror that needed Windex and told her reflection, one night. The locket lay cool against her skin, a familiar weight that sometimes comforted, sometimes accused. The locket's twin had belonged to Emily. Emily, who texted back soon, promised 4 years ago and never kept it. The police report said words like runaway and no signs of foul play. Claire's bones said something else. You don't become silence overnight unless someone helps you. She arrived at Ethan's house with a paper bag of cookies and a heart beating like it owed money. The porch light glowed. The wind chime made a sound like tiny spoons. The neighborhood smelled like wet cedar and somebody's chili. The door opened on Lily, half hiding behind it, eyes moon wide. Claire crouched without thinking, making herself smaller until their faces were level. Hi, she said. I'm Claire. Lily looked at Ethan, then back. I like your necklace. It's a locket, Claire said, tapping it. It holds someone I love. Lily nodded like she understood secrets as currency. I draw stars, she offered, as if it were a handshake. Me too, Claire said softly. When I was your age, I drew them on everything. Ethan had crushed a tie into compliance. He looked like a man auditioning for a role he didn't want but would perform for love. Ready? He asked them both, and the both felt like a door opening. The gym smelled like floor polish and frosting. Streamers sagged bravely overhead. A banner promised community in block letters big enough to believe in. Claire slipped her hand through Ethan's arm because it made sense to. The contact was a live wire, low voltage, steadying. Lily, Miss Ramirez swept over in a floral dress and organizational confidence. You came, and this must be, Claire supplied, when the word Mrs. hovered like a moth. Wonderful, Miss Ramirez said, relief unspooling in her smile. Lily has something special tonight, don't tell her yet. She winked at Lily and rushed away to stop a child from licking a balloon. They moved through stations like a tiny constellation, ring toss, paper airplanes, a photo booth with cardboard hats. Kara Jensen from the PTA materialized with a smile that felt like it had a meeting afterward. So glad to see the Millers whole, she said, as if the word could function as both greeting and judgment. Claire smiled in a way that was technically polite. We're glad to be here. Kara's eyes dipped to the locket and back, calculating. We're doing a Moms of Oakwood photo at the end. Would love to have you. Maybe do Families of Oakwood, Claire said. We come in a lot of shapes, she said it breezy, a kite string veiling a cable. Kara's smile tightened, then smoothed. Cute, she said, and drifted toward better gossip. When the certificates came out, Lily's name on thick paper made Ethan's throat close. He clapped until his palms stung. Claire crouched to take a photo. Hold it up, star girl. Lily did, cheeks pink with a kind of pride that looked like oxygen. A moment later, the gym boomed with applause for a father-daughter dance. Parents filed to the floor like a tide, pulling kids in their wake. Lily's shoulders touched her ears. Claire saw the panic arrive like a too-fast car. We can make our own floor, Claire whispered and showed Lily the scuffed square of tile beside the bleachers. Only for stars, Lily breathed. She let Ethan's hand set the frame, left hand, right hand, and they swayed in a box so small only 3 people could fit. Claire counted under her breath, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, and looked up once to find Ethan looking at her like a grateful man at the edge of water. Back home later, teeth brushed and pajamas chosen, Lily stood in her doorway and asked a question with both hands fisted in the hem of her shirt. Will you come again, Mommy? The word landed and wobbled. Claire's heart did the thing fragile structures do when unexpected weight finds them. It held just, "Sleep tight," she said, because every better sentence would be a promise, and promises were sacred. In the living room, she and Ethan drank tea out of chipped mugs. He said, "Thank you," in a tone that admitted 1,000 unsaid details. She said, "You two sound like home," and watched the admission make the air warmer. They agreed sensibly to an ending, but endings don't always respect good sense. One night became many, not all at once, but the way a road becomes familiar under your tires. Pancakes on Sunday. A trip to the farmer's market where Lily chose apples for their star-shaped cores. A stop at the second-hand bookstore where Claire traded 2 paperbacks for a worn-in copy of a children's astronomy guide and read aloud while Lily traced the illustrations with a finger. Claire learned the creak in Ethan's hallway in which drawer held the tea. She learned Lily's tells, a foot that jiggled when she tried to be brave, a habit of sliding questions under the edges of sentences like notes under doors. She learned Ethan's silences, too, the comfortable ones and the ones packed with old grief. At school, the counselor, Mr. Alvarez, called Ethan in for a chat with the calm voice of a man who believed in small, steady repairs. "Lily's bright," he said, tapping a drawing where constellations crawled across the page like gentle ants. "She uses art to organize feelings, keep her world predictable. Let her set the pace." "I'm trying," Ethan said, which was true and not enough. "You're doing better than trying," Mr. Alvarez said. "You're showing up." They added small rituals, 3 squeezes at drop-off, a star on the lunchbox note. Tuesday taco night where Lily insisted stars could be sprinkled cheese if you arranged them right. The world stayed dangerous, but in pockets it softened. Work tried to pull Ethan under. Tom Ray's breezed through the job site like success rented him the wind. Tom had co-founded the company with Ethan and then made a noisy exit when it became clear that clean contracts and careful invoices bored him. "City ramp job on harbor," Tom said now, clapping Ethan's shoulder like you clap a dog to make it sit. "We can shave 2 weeks if we play smart." "Play safe," Ethan corrected. Tom's smile had the shape of teeth but no warmth. "Right, safe. You ever get tired of being the poster boy for by the book?" "Not yet," Ethan said, turning away before old loyalty could be mistaken for new permission. A near accident on a Thursday snapped the site back to attention. A pallet shifted on a lift, and a young laborer jumped the wrong way. Ethan grabbed his vest and yanked him clear before the corner could dig into his shoulder. He stood afterward with his hands on his knees, breathing hard. "Sorry, boss," the kid said, shame flushing his neck. "Don't be sorry," Ethan said. "Be safe, we go home." "That's the job." He caught Tom watching from the perimeter, expression somewhere between bored and annoyed. "Could have kept it moving," Tom muttered later. "Delay costs. So does a funeral," Ethan said. They looked at each other like an old door learning it had rust. That night, after Lily fell asleep with a glow-in-the-dark galaxy above her bed, Ethan and Claire sat on the stoop with 2 mugs and a sky that looked like someone spilled salt on velvet. "I keep thinking she'll forget," Ethan said softly, "or that she already has and I'm the only one who remembers for both of us." "Grief isn't a thing that goes," Claire said. "It's a thing that grows around you until you make room for something else too." He glanced at her hands. She wore no rings, only the locket catching porch light. "Who's in there?" he asked gently. "My sister," Claire said. "Emily," she swallowed. "She went missing 4 years ago. Police said she ran. They always say that when a girl doesn't make noise on cue. I keep writing a story I never finish because I don't know how it ends." Ethan's head bowed at the offering in that. "I'm sorry, me too," she said. After a beat she stood. "I should go, early deadline." Tomorrow arrived with mail. Claire found the envelope on the floor where it had pushed through the slot. No return address. One line on white paper, printed like a person trying on neatness. "I know what happened to your sister. Trust anyone. Pine Ridge Overlook. Midnight. Bring the locket. Fear has a flavor." Claire tasted old pennies in memory. She looked at the locket. She looked at the clipping on her fridge she'd kept because Lily had pasted gold stars around it. Miller & Sons Construction, community sponsor. In the photo, a white box truck perched like a punctuation mark. A box truck like the one she'd seen at the corner where Emily was last known to be. "Coincidence is a bridge," her editor used to say. "Paranoia walks it. Truth waits on the far side." She texted Ethan, "Can I stop by? Need to ask something weird." He opened the door before she knocked twice. "Everything okay?" 4 years ago," she said, not stepping in. "Did a truck ever go missing?" He blinked. "Yes, the week Anna, the week of the accident. We reported it." The cops shrugged. "Why?" She told him about the note, about the locket, about a memory of a white truck idling where a van shouldn't, a logo she hadn't been able to read in the rain. "Don't go alone," he said immediately, because some sentences don't require thinking. "I'll drive you. We don't get out. We see who shows. If anything feels wrong, we leave." They left the porch light on and drove through a city that had learned how to glow in the damp. Pine Ridge Overlook sat above a slice of water and warehouses. Cars came here to kiss, to fight, to listen to the radio, and think they were the only people who'd ever been sad. A man leaned against the guardrail, hood up. He didn't straighten when they approached, which made Ethan like him fractionally more. Non-threatening men adjusted their bodies so others could breathe. "You Claire?" he asked. The hood shadowed his face. Yes, her voice was a coin held between fingers. "Who are you?" "Marco," he said. "I drove for a guy named Tom Ray's." He glanced at Ethan. "That a problem?" Ethan went very still. Marco's laugh was small and humorless. "Yeah. Thought so. Look, I'm not a good guy. I drove stuff I shouldn't. I kept my mouth shut for money that went to rent and a kid who needs braces. But there are things that don't stop at the dock when you punch out." He scratched the back of his neck. "Your sister, I saw her, the necklace, that locket." Claire's lungs forgot how. "There's a storage unit near Harbor 12, Marco said. B-17. He keeps trophies, keeps notes like he's a businessman at a real desk. He moves people like they're pallets. I can't sleep." "Is she?" Claire started, but the word alive refused to come. It had teeth larger than her mouth. "I don't know," he said, "but I know where the bones of the story are. You bring a cop, not a camera, and don't tell anyone who knows Tom you're coming." Headlights swept the lot like a searching hand. Marco flinched. "I gotta go." He took 3 steps, then looked back at Ethan. "You want clean hands, stop shaking guys with blood on them." He vanished into scrub and night. Back in the truck, Claire shook, then laughed at herself for shaking, then cried because laughing at herself was the kind of cruelty she'd promised to quit. Ethan held the steering wheel like it might try to leave. "I'm calling a detective I trust," he said. "We do this right." Detective Imani Rhodes had a voice like a metronome, steady enough to set your breath to. She listened without fidgeting, asked questions without making Claire feel like she had to pass a test while bleeding. "If there's a ledger and a unit," Rhodes said, "we get a warrant. You do not go near it until we do. You do not tell Mr. Rays you spoke to me. You pretend nothing has changed." "What if he comes to me?" Ethan asked. "You're polite," Rhodes said. "Then you're busy." Waiting turned the world into a drum. Claire filed copy she couldn't remember writing. Ethan measured twice and cut once and checked the time 4 times. Lily sensed the weather change and drew stars with thicker lines. She brought 1 page to Claire and pointed at a cluster she'd labeled safe in careful block letters. "Can you put this on your fridge?" Lily asked. Claire did, next to the clipping, next to a grocery list that had become a small novel. "Safe." She traced the letters with 1 finger. The warrant came through on a Wednesday that pretended to be spring. At the storage facility, fluorescent lights buzzed like flies in summer. Rhodes kept her voice kind and her stance unyielding as the manager unlocked B-17. "Stay here," she told Ethan and Claire. "If there's anything you recognize, we'll bring it out." Time stretched. A cart rattled. An officer appeared with a clear evidence bag containing something silver. He held it up without flourish. Claire made a sound only her body understood. The locket's twin winked at her through plastic. A hair caught in its hinge curled like a question mark. "Ledger," another officer called, lifting a binder the size of a tire. Rhodes flipped it open with gloves and the care of a person handling both paper and grief. Names, dates, codes that stopped being codes when you noticed the pattern. E. Summers, 4/17, H12. "We move now," Rhodes said, the words a door swinging inward. News has a way of finding the men it inconveniences first. Tom read movement in the faces of men who owed him favors, in the sudden silence of phones that used to be chatty. He knew about B-17 before lunch and decided his afternoon would include reminding Ethan what loyalty felt like under a boot. Before he went, he made calls that thinned files, shifted inventory, sent 2 men named Nate and Jory to the docks with directions. Burn what burns, bury what doesn't. They did a terrible job of both and left a trail like bad perfume. At the precinct, Rhodes handed Ethan a styrofoam cup and Claire a bottle of water. "I need statements." "Then you go somewhere public, no heroics." "Heroics are for people who don't have kids," Ethan said. "Smart," Rhodes said. She scribbled, she listened. She said, "I believe you," in a tone that made the words feel heavier and safer than usual. At the house, the wind chime announced Tom like a bad joke. He let himself in the back because old friends don't knock. "Dad," Lily called from the hallway, tone curious without fear. Ethan stepped toward the sound. In the oven's black glass, he saw a reflection that didn't belong. "Missed you, buddy," Tom said, smiling in a way that showed he had stopped practicing sincerity in the mirror years ago. "Lily room," Ethan said, the 2 syllables carrying every emergency he'd ever planned for. "Lock the door." Tom's eyes went to the hallway where a small shadow slipped away. "Relax, I'm not a monster." He rolled his shoulders. "I'm a businessman, one who likes to tie up loose ends before they strangle him." "You used my truck," Ethan said. It was not a question and it was not a beginning. Tom's laugh was warm and empty. "You left it lying around." "You left a lot of things lying around, Ethan. Opportunities, money." His gaze slid past Ethan, found Claire in the doorway, chin high. "And look at this, a writer. You finally got yourself a narrative." Get out, Claire said, gripping the nearest heavy thing, cast iron, blessedly, until her knuckles went white. You threatening me with cookware? Tom's smile sharpened. Adorable, he moved, a quick flash of muscle and wrong intention. The skillet met his forearm with a sound you could feel in your teeth. A knife clattered to tile. Ethan slammed Tom into the refrigerator so hard magnets leapt and a calendar jumped a month. Claire planted herself in front of Lily's door and stayed. Sirens sang their thin song down the block. Rhodes had arranged a welfare pass-by after the storage unit, just in case. The front door burst open and the hallway filled with blue fabric and commands. Hands, an officer snapped, and Tom learned the limits of his charm against handcuffs. After In the Softness Tragedy Leaves when it exits a room, Lily cracked her door and flew into Ethan's arms. He cried without hiding it. Claire slid down the wall slowly, like a painting hung crooked. Rhodes took statements with patience that fit the space. You did the right thing, she said. It's not always the thing that feels strong. Sometimes it's the thing that feels like not dying. Neighbors stood on porches pretending to check mail, eyes wide. Miss Ramirez arrived with cocoa and a scarf she pretended she'd brought because the night was chilly, not because her heart was hot with protectiveness. Kara texted a breezy "everything okay," followed by "moms are wondering." Claire stared at the screen and then put it face down. The ledger became evidence. The locket became a headline for a day and then a talisman again. Other women came forward. Some had names that had been missing from pages for years. They made a line of testimony that stretched from warehouses to courtrooms, and Tom's sentence, when it came, was less relief than a reminder that justice resembled math more than mercy, and sometimes neither. Court smelled like paper and coffee and a certain kind of tired. Claire sat between Ethan and Marco on a bench that creaked. Marco's knee bounced a small earthquake. He'd shaved. The new face didn't look kinder, just uncovered. You did the right thing, Claire said, because sometimes people needed it said out loud. I did it late, Marco said, eyes on the scuffed floor. Late is not the same as never, Ethan said. My dad used to say late is what makes it a story instead of a report. Detective Rhodes testified like a woman loading bricks. Fact, 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 no adornment. When Tom's lawyer tried to suggest the ledger could be fabrication, Rhodes raised one eyebrow an inch and let the silence do the rest. When it was Claire's turn, she felt her throat turn to paper. The judge's face was a landscape she couldn't read. She spoke anyway, about Emily's laugh that had a hiccup in it like a skip in a record, about the pair of lockets and how the metal had warmed against her skin for years, about the plain envelope and the night on the overlook. Do you have proof your sister didn't run away? The defense asked, polite like a dagger wrapped in velvet. No, Claire said. I have proof other people ran toward her and didn't stop. She held the court's gaze like a steady camera. If you want to call that running away, I want different words. A murmur rolled across the gallery and then stilled. The judge's pen stopped moving for a breath and started again. Sentencing came later after recesses and filings and days that stretched and snapped. Tom looked smaller in a suit that once did him favors. The judge read numbers that stacked like bricks: years, fines, restitution. A task force named for a girl who had survived raised a hand in the back row, a small victory in a large room. Outside, the sky tried to be blue and landed on pale. Reporters asked questions. Claire answered none. Ethan put a hand at the small of her back and steered them away from microphones. Marco lit a cigarette, stared at it, and didn't smoke it. At the water that afternoon, Claire set a tiny paper boat afloat. Lily had drawn stars on its sides in purple marker. For Emily, Claire said, for the ones we lost by inches. Ethan's hand found the small of her back, that quiet place where steadiness lives. For the ones still here, he said. They watched the boat until it found a current and forgot them. They did not fix each other. They did something braver. They learned the shape of each other's damage and built gentle furniture around it. Claire kept writing pieces about community gardens and neighborhood potlucks until she was ready to write about girls who didn't come home. When she did, she called the essay Rooms with Windows because she refused to tell stories that ended at doors. The piece went small viral, which felt like a contradiction and a relief. Among the emails were 3 that mattered. One from a teenager in Tacoma who said she didn't feel invisible anymore. One from a mother in Spokane who wrote that she'd stopped blaming her daughter for not being louder when hurt. And one from a nonprofit that asked if Claire would consult on narrative framing for survivor services. Miss Ramirez invited Claire to speak at a library night about families of Oakwood. The flyer, designed by Lily on a school computer, showed a row of differently shaped houses under a banner of stars. Kara Jensen brought lemon bars and an apology delivered sideways. I didn't get it before. I don't always get it now, but I can learn. It was as much as Claire needed. Mr. Alvarez started a feelings map project in Lily's class. Each student drew a map of safe places in their life, rooms, people, ideas. Lily's map had 3 large stars: Dad, CLAIRE, and MY Room. Between them, she drew paths labeled words HUGS, pancakes. In one corner, a small star labeled Mom floated with a trail of tiny dots connecting it to the others. Ethan sat with the paper and cried in the car because crying in front of Lily felt like asking her to carry a bag he still needed to hold. Ethan took contracts that paid slower because they let him sleep. He taught the crew a new mantra, "We go home," and bought coffee in bulk to make it easier to stand around and listen when listening mattered. He retired the & Sons sign and hung one that read Miller Construction with Lily's drawing of a star in the corner. "It's still us," he told his dad's photo, just truer. On Wednesday nights, the house filled with the smell of garlic and the sound of forks. Marco came sometimes, soft-voiced and awkward with praise. "Your kid's smart," he told Ethan once. "She sees patterns." It sounded like he meant more than math. Claire tried therapy again, the kind where the therapist didn't try to excavate her like a ruin but sat beside her like a person at a bus stop. "Grief is clever," the therapist said. "It changes forms to keep you company. You don't have to send it away. You can introduce it to other guests." The locket stayed, but it weighed different. Sometimes Claire left it on her dresser for an hour on purpose, like stretching a muscle. When she wore it, she touched it with affection, not desperation. On a Saturday, they went to the aquarium because Lily had a coupon and Claire had never seen a jellyfish in person. They stood before a tank that glowed like held breath. The jellyfish moved with a deliberate grace that made time feel like something you could put down. "They don't have brains," Lily informed them, dead serious. "Neither do a lot of people with Twitter accounts," Claire said, and Ethan laughed hard enough to draw a shush from a docent. They ate fries by the water, wind stealing warmth from their fingers. Lily chased gulls and returned triumphant with a feather, which Claire washed and left drying on a paper towel like a small flag. On a June evening when the air finally remembered how to be warm without effort, neighbors filled the backyard with folding chairs and potato salads. Paper lanterns bobbed. Somebody tuned a guitar badly and then decided maybe a guitar was less important than laughter. Lily hung glow-in-the-dark stars along the fence so the yard would still be bright when the lanterns went out. "Mom, Dad, fireworks," she shouted, and if the word Mom made anyone blink, they did it privately and then reached for a sparkler. Ethan touched Claire's elbow. Inside a second, in the kitchen where everything had happened and survived, he took a small box from the drawer where the good pens lived. The box was simple and white. The feeling in his throat was not simple at all. "I know you don't wear much," he said, "but I thought maybe something small, not to erase anything, just to stitch it." He opened the box. The ring was plain with a tiny inlaid star. The star caught the light and threw it back. "One night," Ethan said, and laughed at himself because the words broke with history. "One night you saved my daughter. After that you saved me. Not by storms, by weather, you stayed. If you'll keep staying," he paused, not to let her fill the silence but to feel it with her. "Will you be my wife for all the nights?" Claire's answer traveled through a dozen rooms inside her. It passed by fear and didn't stop. It nodded to grief and didn't apologize. It found the small girl in her who had drawn stars in margins and told her they were maps. "Yes," she said. She held out her hand and he slid the ring on and it fit like something earned. Outside, the first firework stitched a brief flower into the sky. Lily squealed. The wind chime made its tiny spoon sound. The neighbors cheered because neighbors are sometimes better than family. Later, when everyone left and the lanterns cooled and the stars Claire hadn't hung watched because that's what stars do, they sat on the stoop again with 2 mugs and a quiet that didn't feel like lack anymore. "Do you think it will always hurt?" Ethan asked, not because he needed the answer, but because asking is another way of staying. "Yes," Claire said, "but not only." She leaned her shoulder against his. "Love turns only into also. Grief learns to share." Lily wandered out in her bare feet, hair a halo of static from a day of play. She climbed into Ethan's lap without asking, as if there had been a time she hadn't, and it was a story she no longer recognized. "Look," she said, pointing. "Orion, that's a winter constellation," Ethan said, automatic, then followed her finger and smiled. "But you're right, sometimes he shows up out of season." Claire tipped her head back and looked. The sky offered nothing definitive and everything necessary. A scatter of light, a map you could read a different way every year and still arrive home. They were married in a park under a cedar that had stood through a dozen storms and would stand through a dozen more. The ceremony was small, Miss Ramirez cried. Marco wore a tie that tried to strangle him and didn't. Mr. Alvarez read a poem about doors and windows. Cara brought lemon bars and a backup plan for rain that the sky politely declined to test. Ethan wore the suit that had been to court twice and seen a man judged and now learned new associations. Claire wore a dress the color of the inside of seashells, and the locket because some stories don't end, they accompany. Lily held the rings in a small petrified wood bowl she'd made at school. She read a paragraph she'd written about stars. "They are far away but also right here because we can see them," she said. That is like love with people. Even if people have to go away for a while, they are still right here. She tapped her chest, because we can see them. The vows were not ornamental. Ethan promised to wash mugs and remember the grocery list and never again let a flyer scare him into pretending he couldn't ask for help. Claire promised to choose plain words when plain words were kinder and fancy ones when fancy ones were fun, and to wear the ring or not wear it depending on what made moving through the world easiest on a given day. They took photos under the cedar. In one, Claire's hand rested on Lily's head like a blessing. In another, Ethan and Claire looked at each other like people who had found a place to set down a bag and had been surprised to discover the ground held. After they ate cake from paper plates and let children stick star stickers on their shoulders, Marco gave a toast that started as an apology and turned into gratitude. I used to think stories were what happened to other people, he said. I used to think I was just the guy driving. Now I know driving is part of the story. They went home married. The house greeted them with the smell of vanilla and the click of the wind chime. Lily stuck the last star from the pack on the front door, just above the peephole, like a lucky coin. In the kitchen, the fridge held layers of their life: school calendars, a photo booth strip, recipes, magnets from places none of them had visited yet, and the old flyer kept for the precise reason people keep painful things. It had turned out to be a doorway. Across the top, in silver marker stars, Lily had added one more, a bigger one with a tail. Someone had written home underneath in block letters. The handwriting was uncertain but trying. The days after were not perfect. Claire had a panic attack in a grocery store aisle when a man in a too loud jacket brushed past with a cart and apologized like a threat. Ethan froze in a hardware store when a radio played the same song that had been on the day Anna died. Lily had a meltdown over a broken pencil because grief sometimes crouched behind silly things and sprang at them for fun. But repairs came quicker now. They learned each other's emergency drills. Claire called Ethan from the parking lot and he talked her through the breathing where you name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. He texted Claire from the hardware store bathroom and she sent a voice note that said, "I'm here. The song will end. I'll be here after." Lily learned that "I need a minute" from either adult meant take the tablet to the couch and guard the fort. At night, sometimes they lay awake and confessed small terrors: taxes, deadlines, the sound a house makes when you're sure it shouldn't. Sometimes they fell asleep mid-story like a shared book with a finger marking the place. Claire published Rooms with Windows as part of a series. She got hate mail from a man who thought the word survivor was political. She got a letter from Emily's high school friend who wrote, "I left too, not like that, but I left. I came back because I didn't want to be missing anymore. Thank you for telling me I could come back." Detective Rhodes sent a Christmas card with a photo of a mutt in a sweater and a note that said, "You made my job matter this year." Tom's name came up less often and then not at all. In the back of Claire's mind, a door stayed cracked and a light stayed on. She didn't close it. She didn't have to. She had other rooms now. In spring, they planted a raised bed in the yard: tomatoes, basil, peppers, a star-shaped herb marker for fun. The first tomato tasted like a victory, too small for a banner and exactly the right size for a mouth. Lily licked juice off her wrist and declared herself a farmer. On an ordinary Tuesday that felt like a holiday for no reason, they walked to the park at dusk. A neighbor kid tried to impress Lily by climbing the monkey bars upside down and fell into the bark chips with a thud that made every adult stand. He popped up laughing. Claire's heart sprinted anyway and then remembered how to walk. They lay on the grass and looked up through the dark leaves. The city hummed. The water answered. The sky did its old trick of offering just enough light to make you think you could count it. "Tell me a story," Lily said. Ethan cleared his throat. "Once upon a time there was a flyer on a fridge." "That's a silly beginning," Lily said, delighted. "It is," Ethan agreed, "but it's the true one." Claire picked up the thread. "Once upon a time there was a diner with a waitress named Bev who knew how to hold the world with coffee." "Once upon a time," Lily said, "there was a necklace that was heavy and then less heavy." "And once upon a time," Ethan said, "a family started by pretending and kept going by telling the truth." "That's the best kind," Lily said, and yawned wide enough to swallow the last word. They walked home in the kind of dark that felt companionable. The wind chime made a sound like tiny spoons. The porch light cut a small circle in the night and they stepped into it together. Inside, the house had learned its own heartbeat. It pulsed through floorboards and along hallways, into a room where a child slept with a hand open, into a room where 2 adults lay with the space between them alleys for breath, not distance. The flyer on the fridge stayed, a relic and a promise. The star sticker on the door glowed a little even after the light went out. One night, borrowed on purpose, had become a life, not by magic, by weather. And outside, the city hummed and the water held the lights the way a good hand holds a small hand, gently, without letting go.